Welcome, councillors, staff and members of the gallery to the council meeting for Tuesday the 23rd of August. And I'd like to acknowledge the land we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationships with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the living Kaurna people today. And also read you the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. Does anybody wish to declare a conflict of interest tonight for any of the matters before us?
I'd just like to seek clarification on one,
Councillor Evans,
if I may, and it concerns the Eastern Health Authority and the report around the Eastern Health Authority. Maybe just some advice from the CEO around whether it would be reasonable for both Councillor Barnett and I to consider whether we may have a conflict of interest.
This is with regard to the item of delegations.
It is. Complexity around regional subsidiaries. I just thought to get some advice.
I look forward to your response.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a complex issue with the new conflict of interest provisions. My advice would be that you do declare a conflict. I don't think it's a material conflict of interest though, because it is dealing with delegations rather than the actual operations of the organisation. But my advice would be that you do put that on record. We are still waiting, as I understand it, for more clarity, and I do know the Minister Brock is investigating the whole issue, and we will be getting some advice following that investigation from the state.
So just to clarify, to declare the interest as members of the EHA board, but because it's not pecuniary, to feel comfortable staying in the meeting and participating in the decision.
Yes, thank you for that clarity. Yes, yes.
All right. Well, in which case then I declare that as an interest.
And I declare that.
Board, yep, and Councillor Barnett the same. Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of conflicts of interest as well with any items tonight? No, in this case we'll move on. So on leave we have nil. Apologies, we have Councillor Bowman. Confirmation of the minutes. Now someone confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council for Tuesday the 26th of July. Councillor Barnett, seconder. Councillor Evans, anybody wish to debate that item? All those in favour? Yes, is carried. Thank you. Looking for a... I've got it covered. Don't panic, everybody. Don't give a colourblind person a red pen. Works. Or a green one. Right. Recommendation, over the page on mine, we have the Mayor's report, and I'm happy to take any questions, but if someone wishes to move it, current form, the lead. Any debate? Got a seconder? Councillor Larwood. You should speak to it. Any further questions or debate? All those in favour? Yes, is carried. Verbal reports from council representatives on local government or community organisations. Do we have any verbal reports? Right, being the case. Petitions nil, deputations nil, motions of notice nil, questions with notice nil. Are there any questions without notice? No? Okay. Over the page on the protocol, we have a number of reports on the agenda tonight, and as is protocol here, we'll pass them on block unless they're withdrawn by somebody. So does anybody wish to withdraw item 13.1, the report on the Chief Executive Officer Performance Development Review Committee meeting on the 15th of August? Comprehensive report, it's all there for you. All right. 15.1, prospect for Tom Club application for variation of a limited club licence, noting that there was an email sent out clarifying the respondent has withdrawn their representation. Do we wish to withdraw that item? All right. 16.1, the Network Prospect Annual Report. Great report, plenty of detail in there. Does anybody wish to withdraw that at all? No? 18.1, Statement of Intent for the Urban Corridor Zone and Interface Areas Policy Review Development Plan Amendment, DPA. I think we should have a longer name for it, quite frankly. Councillor Quick has removed it, thank you. 19.1, Fourth Budget Review, 2015-2016. Overall, Pretty good results. Councillor Evans. Thank you. 19.2, Memorial Gardens traffic speeds. So, Councillor Pickering, couple of hands went up for that one. 19.3, Local Government Association Annual General Meeting Notices of Motion. I'll withdraw it because there's been some slightly changed wording on item 6. 19.4, Review of Delegations to the Eastern Health Authority. Does anybody wish to withdraw that? To be brief, they are as per normal, with some very minor tweaks, as I understand. Nobody? Okay. 19.5, Conference Opportunity, Elected Member Training and Development, the 2016 International Cities and Town Centres Society Annual Conference. Might leave the words from us, I think. Councillor Barnett, wish to withdraw it?
The question again, as my name is mentioned there, was there any wondering conflict of interest at the...
I just asked the CEO to clarify. She's getting very good at this.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I don't think you have a pecuniary interest. We have a training and development budget that's available to all of our councillors, and I think it's only reasonable for you to be able to access that. And whilst you might have put an expression of interest in, I don't believe that in any way you'd seek benefit from attending that conference in a pecuniary way.
And everybody got asked if you want to go to. So nobody wishes to withdraw that one, 19.5. Okay. 19.6, Connecting Prospect Oval to Main North Road by development of the Clayton Church Homes site. Anybody wish to withdraw that? No? So,
Yeah.
Councillor Harris, I'll take. And 19.7, Response to Local Government Association Circulars. Anybody from Councillor Group wishes to withdraw that one? It's good with a bit of discussion around that to guide the CEO. Okay, without any further ado, will someone move on to block item 13, items 13.1, 15.1, 16.1, 19.4 and 19.5.
So moved.
And Councillor Lee, there's no debate. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Evans, thank you. There's no debate, all those in favour? Against? They're all, sorry, I'll just do it again because Councillor Larwood didn't see your hands. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. I get told off otherwise, you know. Someone tells me off, don't they? Whoever that is.
Sorry, you've been here 25 years.
Yeah, anybody but me. Okay. The next item that we'll move to then is item 18.1, the statement of intent for the Purple Corridor Zone interface areas, on page 52. And Councillor Gouge, just a brief reason why you pulled it out, and if you're happy to move it in its current form.
I pulled it out to ask a question, and yes, I'm happy to move it.
Okay, fire away.
Thank you. So, look, this is a really important motion, I think, before us tonight in relation to the statement of intent for the development changes. And we all know that there's been lots of activity in Prospect in the last little while. The report very rightly talks about 52 applications for multi-storey developments, $141 million investment, 752 new homes, and there's 15 projects underway with 2 completed. So I think they're really significant numbers. And if we look back to where we were a couple of years ago to where we are now, we've really made leaps and bounds in terms of what we've been doing. Certainly my time on DAP, I certainly noticed a number of issues that I think we've all noticed as elected members, and also the DAP brought to our attention as well, particularly in terms of design. And 1.5 on page 51 of the report talks about some of the matters that we'll need to do through this analysis process. And it talks about design and appearance, character statement, site setback policy, site amalgamation, shed access and car parking, diversity, building design, landscaping policies, waste management, densities, streetscape activation, widths, and the resident interface. And these are all issues I think we really have tackled and debated both in DAP and outside of DAP as elected members in terms of how we get these policy settings right. And this is a process that I think will do that really well. I just want to point out, and coming to my question, in terms, so I just need to flick through.
Page number?
Well, I'll tell you in a sec.
Excellent.
Page number 84, attachment 28, just talks about the timing. And I think that's a really important part of the report in itself. So 12 weeks for investigations to be conducted, 2 weeks for interim operation, and then we go into consultation. So 14 weeks will get us to the point where we'll have interim operational changes that we come up with and looking at the statement of intent. My question to the Director of Community Planning is whether how fixed those dates are and whether that could happen any sooner than that 12-week period.
Thank you, Director.
Through the Chair, thanks for the question. All efforts will be made to do it in a quicker time period than that. In my 15 or so years in planning, I haven't seen investigations of this of scale needed for a DPA like this be completed any quicker than that. So I think it's realistic as it is, and we will certainly be endeavouring not to blow that out.
Perhaps unusually, I might suggest from the Chair that the issue of time with the development plan change is usually something that we will extend to allow plenty of consultation. You might be able to address why you're interested in a tighter time frame to get to interim effect in this instance, which is for us is very unusual.
Yes, it is, isn't it? My understanding is that there is legislation going before the Parliament soon, if not already in Parliament, or certainly towards the end of the year, and making sure that we don't miss that, I guess, that window of opportunity we have to make changes. Do you want to explain a little bit more through the Mayor about what the legislation is that's going before Parliament and what ministers?
Somewhat unusually, I can.
Thanks, Director.
We have asked the Minister of Finance to have this considered under interim effect because we already have a development plan on foot. There are applications coming in every month, and the sooner we can get in the new improved version, the sooner the next application will be subject to it. And ordinarily, I think, perhaps Director, if I approach you, if we didn't get interim effect, how long would it take for the new rules to be enforceable?
Thanks for the question, and through you. Generally, without the interim authorisation, you go through the consultation period, which is a 2-month period. That then leads to public hearing, feedback, amendments, SPDPC meetings, and so on and so forth, before there's a final version. Generally, in my experience, it's around a 12-month period. The interim authorisation, therefore, brings us forward around that time.
So to around 3 months, I think. Is that right?
That's right. Through you, we're looking at 3 months to get to that point. And interim authorisation brings into effect the policies prior to the consultation.
Sorry.
No. And look, that's my point exactly. We've dealt with interim orders in the past in this council to great effect, I think, in terms of protecting heritage and making sure we get good quality development outcomes. And that's why I think that's really important here. The other point I just want to make was this statement of intent has also been considered by the Strategic Planning Development Policies Committee, I think a week or two ago, or 3 or 4, maybe, weeks ago, several weeks ago, but it was considered by the committee. I think that's an important part of our governance process is we do have that committee to consider some of the options we're putting forward public elections. And I understand that was passed unanimously at that committee as well. So I would certainly commend this report to the motion and hopefully it gets all support of council.
Seconder. Pistons in an engine. Do I have a seconder?
Sure.
Councillor Evans, brilliant. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. I'd just like to ask a question first, and it's perhaps to the Director of Communication as well, and it's just around, and I'm noticing on page 12 here commentary around streetscape activation, so how that's one of the things that we would like to target, and that is tied somewhat into car parking as well, and understanding the constraints that exist around car parking. I'm just wondering to what effect we may be able to influence some of those decisions around car parking and around ground floor activation through an amended DPA.
Director.
Through the Chair, the intent is to look at whether it's possible to relax some of the car parking provisions in order to further promote the ground level activation. What we're finding, particularly on Churchill Road, where the policy already promotes ground floor activation, is the car parking rates are actually leading to it not working. You can't fit it essentially on the site. What we need to look at as part of the investigations and whether or not that's possible is if you relax the car parking rates, where do the cars park? And that's where we have the council's car parking fund opportunity, and we need to look at the science as to whether or not that would be something the council will provide in the future. But that's all part of that investigation process over the next 12 weeks.
Sure. Thanks.
Just from, sorry, anything further?
No, yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
Just from the chair, this is a really important process, so I ask elected members to think about this and get involved. And to influence development plans, you need to do a lot of reading, and then you need to try and apply designs through the policy as it's worded. If you're not happy with the wording, change the words. It's not enough for us to say, I don't like it, or I want this to happen. You've got to get it into the black and white, because that's ultimately what the staff use to assess the applications against, and ultimately that's what the court uses to assess the applications against. It's a difficult process for people who aren't engaged in this type of activity to get into. I just want you to understand that the community already holds us to account for the policy framework we have in place at the moment, and those of us who were around for that know that we didn't control it as much as we wanted to. Here's our opportunity to control it a lot more. I don't think we'll get a third bite. So for those of us who are really interested in this topic, I just urge us to put the time in to understand it. If you don't understand it, ask a question at the very least, and really make sure we put some robust scrutiny around what we're putting up, and get it as good as it can be. Because when we do this, our corridor development plan will be the best in the state, and others will look to it as a template. So let's do as good a job we can, and so we're not in 12 months' time defending to the community why we've ended up with something that we wouldn't be proud of. Okay, so just heads up, it's not going to take long, get into it, and please, if you don't understand, ask somebody. We've got some great staff to help us through those questions. Thank you to the movement for putting it up. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I think it's important that, you know, when planning legislation was introduced, I think it was about 1964 or sometime sort of like that, and then it was sort of like, oh, well, that's the law, you know, that's the planning law, you know, you can't sort of, you know, go and do anything else other than what that says. But then in the collection of time, we're now told that our development plans are policy, and therefore we have this notion of merit, and I think that that's been quite a very difficult concept, and particularly for residents who are, you know, unhappy with some of the planning, and they say, but you know, that's what got passed, you know, that's what, you know, they say. So I think so this, and also I think when we started off on this journey, when it was quite clear what the government of the time and the I think it's still the same the planning minister has changed. And so when we went on study tour interstate and we saw what, you know, could be some of the issues with and some of our fears, I think sort of have become realised that you know, suddenly we have an explosion, you know, which is good for apartment dwellings, particularly on Church Road and Prospect Road, but therein that has brought us back to this saying, right, we recognise that there are have been dilemmas, you know, that we do have suddenly, you know, what had our traditional sort of a house on a block, and you think, how on earth could they build, you know, all these 3 or 4-storey dwellings on this one block? So again, it's all about trying to cope with the change that's happened and trying to get ourselves, our own heads around this within the confines of what the state government direction has been. And I think that's where we're saying, well, look, we're not prepared just to sit back and have this happen. We want to be able to take the lead in this process and try and get some change for the better. So again, this won't be necessarily the panacea for everything out there. I don't know how we persuade developers, you know, the cookie cutter approach to planning. I guess some of it's how do you get past a square or a rectangle shape being the most efficient way to sort of build an apartment block. So I guess it's up to us to say, right, well, there can be other ways of doing it, and it's up to us to be able to try and find some of those possible examples. And it may be possible, again, I've said before about looking perhaps more at different housing policies and the co-housing policy model that's come up, to try and see if we can affect some change in the better design and some other more innovative ways as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate on this item? No? Back to you, Deputy Mayor, if you wish to sum up.
Look, just very briefly, I think the intent of what Councillor Barnett was saying can be summed up in 5.11 of the report, where it talks about City of Prospect has a desire to play a leadership role in ensuring high quality development outcomes within strategic growth corridors. And it goes on to say that these learnings will be able to be used across other councils. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, be a leader in this area, be a leader in this field of development, sustainable development, and at the end of the day, providing a whole range of housing options for the people in the City of Prospect, which is based on good design, and that's what we want to do. The TTIP will be in the development plan and the amendments. I think the other point to make is that this also includes a consultation period with our community after the interim takes effect, or the interim order takes effect. That's for 8 weeks, and that gives us a good solid opportunity to talk to our community, and I think it's incumbent on all of us to be part of that process as well.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item withdrawn was 19.1, report budget review on page 106. And Councillor Evans, just a brief reason why you withdrew it.
Just to ask 2 questions.
Okay, are you happy to move it in its current form?
I am indeed.
Well, fire away, doing both.
Sure. I guess question to the Director of Corporate Services, and it's just around receipt of some of the grants income, and I noticed that we've received about $330,000-ish less than what we had initially anticipated. Does that mean that our already relatively good position would have in fact been made better if that grant money had been received at the end of the 4th quarter?
Director?
Through the Chair, yes, that's correct. Currently, we present 104,000 projected operating surplus. If we have received that amount in advance, yes, it would have been 400,000.
Sure.
Which would have been in our target. Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Back to you.
That was really the point I was looking to make. So, yeah.
You had a couple of questions.
Well, I did. I think I can answer the other one, so I didn't think to raise it. But since we've raised it, we might as well. Page 108, the asset sustainability ratio. We budgeted a 98% ratio. It's gone down to 95. I think attachment 9, which is page 100 and what was it? Page 100 and 23 was the difference, and I was just looking to seek confirmation on that. So the reason why our sustainability ratio dropped was because what we'd actually achieved by way of capital projects was less than what was budgeted. Is that right?
Through
Yeah.
the Chair, that's correct. We do have a carry forward amount of about 300,000. That could be contributed. That contributed to one of the reasons why the ratio is lower than the budget.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Thanks.
So, Director, just to follow up on that question, the intention is that gets rectified this year. So are we aiming for therefore a 103% coverage ratio this year, or 3% more than we were otherwise budgeting for?
Through the Chair, the ratio will be adjusted in parallel to the carry forward and added to the current financial year's capital work.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anything further, Councillor Evans, on the report?
That's all. Thanks.
Okay.
To congratulate, I guess, staff on a good report and a good result for the financial year as well. You know, we've got a lot going on, and I think it's all being managed and done really well. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Well said. Do I have a second? Councillor Lee, I'll pick that time. Did you wish to speak to it?
No, that's fine. I think Councillor Evans spoke very well and spoke to it and comes up much.
Yeah, thank you. Any further debate from those who have seconded? No, just from the Chair, the question about the grants timing is a really pertinent one. One of our motions later in the meeting talks about trying to get stability in that regard. Well, it does cause a turnaround of material, $330,000. Some federal governments choose to provide the 4 quarters within one budget year, which is what we would expect. Some choose to pull forward 1 or 2 quarters to make the year they're in look worse and the year that's ahead that they're about to deliver a budget on look better. The grant funding for councils across the country is in the order of $2.7 billion. So half of that, if they change half, it's $1.3 billion. So for them, it's kind of not the end of the world, but it's, you know, it's material in terms of how they do their numbers as well. We obviously want consistency in that. It's not good for us and our community to have those sort of numbers moving around. It's very hard to explain to the average ratepayer what's going on. In this instance, we're lucky that we've not had the funding, but been able to find other savings to make up for it and still end up being in front, which I think is a great result. So I commend the staff, all of the staff, for finding savings where they were possible, and look forward to the carryovers being delivered as quickly and as efficiently as we can, where appropriate. And getting on with the next budget year and doing so, hopefully with the same degree of success. Because you might remember, elected members, that the budget we passed has a significant deficit at the front end of it to account for the Deflect project, which is a one-off in that year. I think the year just gone was an $800,000 imposition on the budget. So we've been able to absorb that and still come out in front due to some timing issues and some other savings. So I think we've got a really good financial structure going forward. Once that Deflect washes out of our annual budget, we'll actually have some headspace in it, which I think is really important and places us in a good position for considering that major community hub project and how to fund the, if we have a large loan, and how to fund it. So I think it's a better place to be than we could otherwise be. So I'm really grateful to the staff for helping us get to that position. Thank you. Enough from me. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I think I've been a member of the audit, our council's audit committee, and to thank our staff. They do a really fantastic job. And I think the audit committee generally on the whole just had a meeting yesterday, and they're quite very pleased, I think, about the way things are coming along. But I think part of our dilemma, and you know, not our council, but most part all councils throughout Australia, is we're pushing 2 mountains uphill, and that is, how do you get the accounting, the national Australian accounting standards changed? Because that's the other thing that stops us from, you know, counting something now or next financial year. And how do you get the, as been explained before, how do you get the federal government to jolly well be efficient, and so we council can be efficient and give us the money when we're supposed to be getting it in the right financial year. So I don't see much joy in trying to change those, but you never know.
You never know. Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further debate on this item? Back to Councillor Evans, you should sum up.
No, thanks.
That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. The next item withdrawn was item 19.2, Memorial Gardens traffic speeds. Councillor Group, just a brief reason why you withdrawn.
Look, I just thought it was worthy of having some debate about this particular issue, so I wanted to withdraw.
Thank you. I agree on the basis that the original request from Council asked for some options to be provided to us. And there are some options, but there are other options as well that might be worth talking about. So there are 3 listed in the report, but I think that there are some alternatives. And so with your indulgence, I seek to suspend meeting procedures until 7:50, should be needed. All those in favour? Against is carried. So if we just turn to that report, and you'll notice, I can't remember the item number within the report, there are 3 options listed in the text there. They are at item 511. And those of us who've been around a while would recognise those three options as being part of the original master plan that went out for community consultation. I don't recall them being in the final, I don't recall one of them being in the final master plan, because we received significant criticism about item number 2. But there were other options that I think the staff had considered before they came to this position. So perhaps I might start with yourself, Greg. Just what are the other options? What did you think about in terms of getting to the recommendation you've currently got before us?
Yeah, like what we came up with was something that's quite inexpensive but quite effective, is implementing zebra crossings at a couple of locations along Menzies, and also introducing a 10-kilometre speed zone through there to make it more in keeping with our shared space. Because if you can, I guess, think about Menzies, any particular that bit, what you have is the playground, you have a lot of parking through there as well, and you have very slow speed through there. So we thought we would actually encourage people to use that space by slowing the whole stretch of road down and incorporating some zebra crossings. And we're happy to trial those for a period of time to see how effective they are. You'll find that the space is becoming more and more popular, and especially coming into the warmer months. There's a lot more children activity, parent activity through there. So I would suggest that would be a good low-tech treatment.
General options, though, Greg? What other things do you explore? Humps or chicanes or different?
Yeah, there's an array. There's an array. Yes, there's an array. Look, ultimately, through the master planning process, what we would like to get is the end state would be an elevated roadway, almost a plateau, treated with different type of paving to make it quite unique and really make it clear to people that it is a shared zone. But that's the long term. That's the long term state. If council do invest in the future in that whole precinct, that's ultimately what we want to see through there. That it's changed its function completely, and it will be lend itself to more principles around a shared use zone.
Councillor Criddle, Mark, as you pulled it out.
Yep, I'm going to start. This is something we talked about at the last council meeting, right back here tonight. A couple of things from my perspective. The traffic count is quite old. In fact, it was 2 years ago yesterday that traffic count counts now. I suspect it's a lot higher now, given that the playground is much more well used. It's a bigger playground, it's a regional status playground. So I suspect those numbers are a little bit probably on the conservative side. This came to me through a series of complaints from residents who were concerned about both traffic volume and also speed. This doesn't do necessarily directly with volume, but it does partly with speed. In terms of the 10 kilometre, I quite like the idea of having the shared space approach which was in the master plan. Whether that's a step too far right now is, I guess, a question, and whether we maybe go to the 25 speed limit for now, which is consistent with around school zones, and then look and see how that goes, and then go one step further to 10. We probably would need to do a bit of consultation if we go to 10 with the surrounding neighbours, because it will have impacts beyond these two roads. But I think the principle of doing this is good. I think that the zebra crossings are a great idea. There's one in Perry Street now, they council trial to great effect and to work in that street or close by, and it has really, really good effect. Honey Street? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I have to turn that. Not anymore.
Regular.
So I think that what's been proposed is a really good low-cost solution. And something that I think we should trial. If it doesn't work, we go back to maybe look at some other options. But I think it should have an immediate effect. I think it can do this. But I'd be really open to maybe having a conversation about the speed more than anything else.
Okay. Mark, other Mark.
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit perplexed by the report. I think it was intended to investigate one thing, but seemed to investigate another. I mean, from what I understand, the purpose was really to sort of improve pedestrian safety, but there's very little from what I can see in here about what the current state of play of pedestrian safety is. I mean, there's nothing in there about how visitation has increased. I can't see whether there's been any reports of people having near misses or whatever, and I'm kind of a bit perplexed on what problem we're trying to solve. I haven't been presented with a problem that needs solving. I did a bit of investigation on the master plan because I was looking into this, and it would seem that the idea was to sort of pedestrianise Menzies Crescent, and there's artists' impressions of what was going to happen, and the budget for that seemed to be $200,000 with maybe $50,000 coming from the government somehow. So we're sort of, I think we're putting the horse before the cart. I mean, we want the shared space, and from what I can understand, 10 kilometres an hour is a shared space speed limit, but we're not actually going to create a shared space, and I think it's going to become very confusing for the 911, probably more, as you say, the 911 drivers that use that every day. I've spent the last couple of days, I drove through there a couple of times, both ways, at 10 kilometres an hour, and I drive in the Christmas pageant every year, and it seemed as slow as that. And I just think it's going to become very frustrating, very confusing for the people who use it. We see there's a whole lot of conflicting stuff in this report. I mean, there's bits in here where it says, due to low speed and traffic volumes, it was determined by the LATM consultant that further analysis was not necessary. And there's two speed humps there already. There's a lot of stuff in here that says we don't need to do anything. And the speed limit, maybe the data is out of whack, but I don't think the speed data would be out of whack. And currently the average speed is 24.3 kilometres an hour. So the speed limit's 50 kilometres an hour. People are already, by the nature of the way the thing's set out, people are already doing half the speed limit. I think 10 kilometres an hour, I don't know where that came from, but it just seems like a complete overkill to me, and I have no clue. I don't think people are going to keep to it unless you do something really radical, and that is obviously doing the pedestrianised area. I think, look, to be honest, I think it's a really poorly written report that is kind of all a bit over the place, to be honest, and I'm not really happy to endorse any part of it at this point.
So just to go back to other Mark's suggestion about perhaps 10 might be a little bit too extreme, but a 25 like a school zone kind of thinking.
I don't know what problem it's trying to solve. I mean, I'm yet to convince, if people are already travelling at 25 kilometres an hour, I don't know what it's going to achieve. Maybe it'll formalise what they're already doing, and perhaps that's a good thing, but I haven't been convinced yet that there's a problem. I'd like to see all the complaints that they have, and is it busier, and I'd like to see some data on that. I'm really hesitant to make any decisions without data on the solution of the problem that we're actually trying to solve here.
Okay, thank you. Alan, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, just have to sort of then change my mind a little bit of where I was going to some of those things. I think the 10 kilometres at the current, as the road is not necessary because of the average speed, and I'm always a bit worried about them. But the 25 sort of business, I'm comfortable with that in the door. But a couple of quick sort of questions I had. The zebra crossing is still the flat one, isn't it? It's a crossing with a flat. So saying it's a cheap version, which I imagine it would be, roughly still how much would it be to do?
It would just be line marking, which is a few $100 and some signage. Yeah.
Right. Okay, it's just then I got the figure. I'm unfortunately at a bit of a belief we got a master plan for the area, but with the situation with the RSL and the cricket club and a few of those things, I never like to say I don't see things as a reality anymore, but I think it'd be a long-term thing or a nothing thing at this time. So I think any problems there, and Mark, why I haven't got numbers, I would see some problems solely because of the playground and the increase in people that you go past, and then you got the swollen angels that are going to be, not swollen angels, archangels that are going to be cleaning the bins. So and the reason they're going to be doing that is, I knew they were some sort of angels. The reason they were going to be doing that is because of that increase in rubbish, which that comes from increase in people, you know. So I see the increase, but maybe signs of, 25 kilometres an hour and that sort of stuff. I do have one concern with one of the zebra crossings, the one opposite the oval or the main door. I don't have a problem with that because it sits there and I don't think the footballers will use it, but it'll be nice. But the one that's down by the other gates a little bit, start and to look at 3rd Avenue and Colin Grove where you get to a main area, i.e. the gates, you can have people building up there with cars with tin lids crossing the road, and if this car gets caught with this car, suddenly you're not far, and that's where I'm seeing it, not far away from there, that you can have a bit of problems with the kids running around the cars. So my view there is I think we're still, if we're going to do something, go down that thing, because it's not that dear, a 25 kilometre setup, and that's mainly what they're doing anyway. So, but when it's mainly what people do, it doesn't mean they have to do, so they can jump the gun. So I think it should be the 25 kilometre, and I'd be a bit interested, and it mucks it up with the walkway and that stuff, but I'm a bit concerned about a crossing being close to that gate, particularly, and I imagine there's other places, but if you look at 3rd Avenue and Hampstead Road, and it's a big road, but bang, cars start getting caught up, they get caught up on the island, and that's why we've painted the big keep clear sort of stuff, and I got that concern on that zebra crossing.
It's a good point, because it goes from effectively a one-way restriction.
Yeah.
In terms of people queuing, waiting for pedestrians, and then who takes off first, sort of thing. I think, Greg, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, look, spot on. If you take the gates in consideration and all the parking through that whole zone, it is a very different zone, and people, when they enter it, behave very differently. And that's why I guess there's some method in the madness around putting 10Ks, because there's cars parked, especially about those conflict issues around kids crossing behind cars. But if it's at a lower speed and you have zebra crossings, formalising crossing points and making it very person-centric rather than car-centric, this is what it was about. This is the idea behind it, to make it into a very different zone.
I haven't heard anyone argue against the zebra crossings, except not one of justification. Alan's question was, can it be where it is because it's so close to the gates?
Yeah, look,
so proximity to the gates is his question. Have you thought about the proximity and the distance from the gates for queuing and whatever?
Yeah, and we can do that. Yeah, as far as moving away, if there are conflict issues, and we can, if we go off with this, with your blessing, we will take all of that into consideration.
I don't bless people, I'm not a priest.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Can your cars and mine do 10 kilometres an hour? I don't know if mine do.
Apparently at the moment it's doing 0, so to get up beyond 0 it has to get to 10 at some point, but it's just
right.
physics. Christine?
Yes, I'm just wondering,
You can stand if you want.
Right. Anyway, yes, I'm just trying to see, is this more about perception rather than, I mean, we haven't really had any act, and I'd hate to think that we'd have to get to the point where there've been any near misses or there've been, and all that. I mean, we put the fence around the playground, and that was, had a bit of discussion about doing that. Again, I think that the one down near the gates, the Flora Terrace gates, that is a bit too close there. I think because a lot of it's about psychological perception, so as you come down, unless you're a hoon and nothing's going to stop them, you do actually start, to slow down. And I mean, Flora Terrace to me is about the only part you can really get speed up to 50, either way, really. And the other point is, yes, I just think that, that's right. Notice that what we're, I think, really trying to warn people is, and motorists, is that you're approaching a playground. You're approaching an area where there are kids. Now, a lot of people, and particularly those that don't have kids, wouldn't even really recognise, they've put some lines on a road, that means there are kids. You know, they've changed the down to 25 or 10 Ks, but that still doesn't perhaps register that why we are doing it. I would like to see some more effort put into some signage before the approaches and all that, that say children, crossing, or children nearby, or, playground, sort of make it obvious that that's why you do this. All to me just seems to be a bit, sort of, you're hoping that it will slow them down.
Yep, so some people walking signs, or whatever it might be.
Whatever we're allowed to have.
Something graphic rather than words.
Yeah.
Yep. There's an enforceability issue here, of course, like we can't enforce it, so with putting our information trailer there with the speed on it, but it is a police matter to enforce, so we'll think about the practicalities of that. Monica?
Do we have to ask, apply for a change in terms of here?
We ultimately, some of the testing that we've done with it, they wouldn't necessarily object to it because of the nature of that zone, and it complements the zebra crossings as well, and the locations of the park as well helps with that, those conflict points. So some of the initial discussions we've had, there wouldn't be a huge objection.
So if you suggest 10 days,
Oh, yes.
I think it's a nice transition to something else. That's got a master plan, etc. But I think if you start getting people's headspace around slowing down, being very slow, that this is actually a place where people across it will. I think I'm not fussed whether it's 10 or 25. I've walked there. I don't generally drive over there, so I'm not quite sure what people do. But very supportive. Just wondering, it's a big distance between each of the zebra crossings if it was to stay where it is, and it makes sense there because that's where the path ends, but it doesn't make sense there because that's where the gates are. Would it be very expensive to put another one further up the bend so that you give people safe options to cross, or do you?
Yeah, sure. Look, we said just to start off with a couple, but by all means, it is a fair length, and if elected members would like us to pursue an additional one, happy to take that on board. And look, I'll take that on board and just talk with the subject matter experts around whether that would add anything. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great idea to start transitioning people into what sort of place we have.
So I guess the easy things from my perspective, stuff on the road, I love it. Painting the road, I think is a great way of changing the use of a road. That's more of a personal view. So the idea of doing zebra crossings is definitely great. I'd fully support that. The speed limit thing, don't know. I don't think it's a fully written report. I think it's giving us some good information. 10 kilometres does change the use quite a bit. And if it was part of a broader plan, it would absolutely be justified, I think. What I'm just having trouble rationalising in my head is how this directly relates to our bigger plan. So we've got the Memorial Gardens master plan, and we're continuing to stage that out, and the use is definitely changing. And so I'm just trying to think about what impact will this have on the master plan. No doubt positive, but how does that tie in with everything else we've got as the vision for the space? And I guess when there is, the question raised about, well, why are we doing this? We can have a justification around the safety aspect and around the change of use aspect, which would be in line with the master plan. So all I'm trying to do is just think about how would that relate to the master plan. So I'm not against it. Definitely like the concept. It's just a matter of, I think, understanding more about the plan more broadly.
Okay. Matt?
I don't necessarily agree that it's a fully written report, although I noticed that the word Wilcox is spelt incorrectly in the report.
CEO will attend to that matter to the staff.
Yes. I think 10 kilometres an hour is a bit crazy. I don't know why zebras have a monopoly on being named the animal of choice for crossings. Maybe we could have a snail crossing or a leopard. No, leopard's probably running. So
technically, under our road rules, you can't have a zebra crossing. You can have a wombat crossing or an emu crossing or something like that. Koala crossing. So, no one understands what they mean. When you say zebra crossing, everyone understands what that means.
So the zebra crossing near the club rooms, as long as it's not like one of those things that you see on Facebook where the person had one thing to get right, and if that zebra crossing ends up at a wall across the other side of the footy club, that would seem to be a little bit strange. But I can't. One thing I agree with Mark Sanham about is I can't see anything here about near misses, and therefore what this is all about. It's sending a mixed message with the approach. I think something can be done, but I'm just not sure whether what's been outlined is the right thing. It's a little bit unclear in my mind as to what we're trying to achieve here. But I do think the report's well written, apart from that horrific spelling error, one of the most prestigious streets in Prospect.
Matches some of our signposts.
Yeah, it used to be. I know some kids grew up there. So, thank you. We've just got to our time limit. Seek your permission, your leave, to extend the suspension of meeting procedures until 8 o'clock. Was in favour? Against is carried. Just from my point of view, and I'll come to Mark after for a second bite. I think the report is trying to get to the solution perhaps a little too quickly. Certainly, council has asked the staff to look at options for how to make pedestrians feel more safe in this environment. And regardless of what the facts are, the feedback that come through the mover of the secondary opportunity of this resolution was that people perceive that they're not safe. Okay, well, fine, get all the data you like, but that's a perception. How do we deal with that? We can counsel them and make them feel safer. We can go and acknowledge that it's a heavily pedestrianised environment and maybe there is something to that. I think there are several things that need to be explored. I'm not quite sure where we sit with regard to this report, whether we're happy to move ahead right now with something. I think 10 k's is too slow. It doesn't look like a car park. It doesn't look like a shared zone yet. I think most people would find that really frustrating, that speed limit, and they'd be worried about getting a fine. If they did get a fine, they'd go nuts. Or they'd move the traffic and move themselves to Kintor and Wilcox, in which case I think we should be asking Kintor and Wilcox if they're happy about that potential change. And this doesn't have any community consultation whatsoever. 25 to me makes a bit more sense because it is a kid's kind of speed. That's what schools use. Can easily justify that. Probably on a trial basis, maybe without consultation, but you have it on a trial and say, give me a go for 6 months and get some feedback through a process like that. Signs are easy to take out if you don't like it or change the number on it. Some kids try and change the number in an unauthorised fashion, but not often. The zebra crossings one I find really interesting because with all this stuff, when designing parks and open spaces, it's always good to do some movement mapping. And that there's no doubt that the paths through this park were changed from what they were originally, which as I understand was quite a formal layout, one going due east-west, one going from the archway on the corner of Menzies towards the centre drinking fountain. And they were pulled out because no one used to use them, because people wanted to go from one corner of the park to the other corner of the park, and of course that's where the path is now. So a very sensible change. And not at all formal, but that's what people did. It makes sense to have the zebra crossing or some sort of safer feel to the crossing at the eastern end of the path towards the oval. That's quite a commonly used bit of road there for pedestrians. And during footy day, it's very popular, that crossing. So that kind of makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not so confident about the other end. I think people tend to come out of the park and walk down that side of Flora, the north side, and they cross somewhere down Flora. But then I very rarely see people crossing before the gates to go down. So I'm not quite sure about that location. Although there is a gateway to the Croquet Club, which is somewhat popular, and there is a need for parents to get kids across the road to the playground if they're parking on the south side of the road. So I understand that. So they park at the south side, get kids out, walk across the playground. A crossing would probably be handy, but it would be nice to see some logic around the people movement patterns. The idea, Monica's idea of having one on the corner is interesting because there's a laneway there that comes from Kintor Avenue. And I'm just trying to think as we were talking about how people move from that laneway to the park. They tend to go diagonally across the corner. And I've just noticed we've replaced the concrete path along Menzies Crescent, and we stopped it short. I don't know why, I was actually going to ask you about this, but the path doesn't go to the corner anymore. It stops before the bend starts and directs you to walk 90 degrees to where you've just been walking to get across, and 90 degrees again to go up to the laneway, and then 90 degrees to the laneway, which no one ever does. So this might be an opportunity to revisit how people come from the laneway into the park, and I would think it's probably diagonal. I don't know whether zebra crossings can work like that. I don't know how that interfaces with the driveway into the croquet club and the gates to the oval. But it might be a really nice opportunity to pedestrianise that whole corner. I mean, if you make the whole corner a massive wombat crossing or whatever the right terminology is.
Fat zebra.
Big fat zebra crossing. And that might actually visually look really kind of like, holy, this is, I've got to slow down to get around this thing because it's full of white lines, which I think would be kind of interesting to explore, but I don't know if there's enough white paint to do that. And I guess I'm probably looking for...
The comment was we were going to do a U-turn.
Well, the croquet club.
Well, I'm not sure that you're not allowed to do a U-turn
A U-turn on a zebra?
on a wombat.
Don't do the U-turn over a chunk.
Anyway, point I'm making is, I guess, if we want to pedestrianise the zone and we can't afford to do the paving over and the mall kind of thing, then paint's a good pathway to it for a few years, see how it goes. But I'd like to see a bit more logic around the people movement pathways and get the crossings to kind of match up with that. And I think a lower speed limit is probably appropriate, although speed's not a problem. I think a 25 would probably just reinforce on people's minds that this is a different place to a normal road. And I think that's probably worth doing on a trial basis. Now, before we go to Chris, Mark needs hand up first.
Very briefly, I mean, eventually I can see that it's probably going to become pedestrianised, although I don't know how the money's going to work out, considering we've got so many other projects that seem to have taken over for this. And my wonderings were, how does that sit with our east-west pathways or roadways or traffic that we're trying to encourage? I mean, it's one, if we take out Flora Terrace as a conduit through east-west, it's just reducing. No, but if we pedestrianise it becomes one of those things that people won't use. But that's something we can look at down the track. I did have a look at John Street in Salisbury today because it was one of the pedestrianised shared spaces that I was aware of, and the speed limit there, very heavily pedestrianised. The speed limit there is 20 k's. So, and that has got a lot of people, a lot of kids all the time and cars, a very well used shared space. But I'd look, if it was to come up as 25, I'd support that, but currently I can't support it the way it is.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that the zebra crossing that's proposed to go from, where the tennis court part ends, that one there, that nearly always that area has got huge puddles of water around it. So you're going to have them, stepping through quite a few big puddles there. That happens there. So I think if you're going to be looking at something there, look at the gathering of water. It's quite consistent, especially in the winter time.
Kids do like puddles.
And zebras have to drink.
I'm just thinking ordinarily.
Zebras?
You've got to walk, you've got to actually make quite a detour around there, so it defeats the purpose of trying to keep them on the jolly thing if you've got to walk around it in winter.
Okay, all right.
And the other thing was, I mentioned before about the gate that leads to the, down the bottom, that leads to the croquet club. To me, it would make more sense, if you move that zebra crossing up to there, because then it would also help the croquet club members and people that are visiting there to get, if they're parking on the other side, to move. So it might be better just to move it along a bit if it's still needed there. And Mark, just on my comment I was going to say about, well, how's it fitting in now with what we're doing up with the
Oval.
the other end of the Oval,
Church.
Main Road, and having a pedestrian walkway, and they're all being very nice. So where are they actually walking to?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Yeah.
So that could be looked at in the whole context of things.
Can I take it? I think it's been some really good feedback and a good discussion. I'm not comfortable to ask someone to move what's here at the moment, and I'm not quite sure that I want to encourage you to modify it heavily. I'm wondering whether we let it lie on the table and come back as quick as it can, because I think the feedback's been really useful. And that, if people are okay with that, then
Before we answer that, would a simple amendment of 25 kilometre speed restriction not resolve the majority of issues, if not all the issues that have been discussed?
No, there's been a lot of discussion about where the second zebra crossing would go and whether there should be a third zebra crossing.
That's a bit.
How it fits into the east-west movement, which I think are really good points, and I'd like to see them, personally, I'd like to see them thought about. So, I mean, we could modify this till the cows come home on the zebras, but I just think it would be better if the report gives that due consideration and justifies what it wants to do. Is there an urgency to this item at all, in anyone's mind? If it's not the case, then why don't we ask the staff to...
There was a requirement in the recommendation to come back to this meeting. I presume we fulfilled that by putting it on the agenda.
Just leave it and not even vote on it.
So if people are okay with that, I don't often do it, but I just think it's not, I mean, the situation existed for a while, and I think we're on a good pathway to improving it. So I think the feedback that I've heard is the 10 sounds a bit too much at this point, but 25 looks like most people would say, yeah, that's okay. A trial basis might be worth exploring, so you might give some consideration to a 6-month trial, given that we haven't consulted, or alternatively, some consultation, one of the two. The zebra crossing locations need some fine tuning, and it might be good to actually give us a bit bigger drawing about how that and whether the east-west through the new pathway in a future motion through the Clayton Church Home somehow links up, and how that plays into here, and the laneway to Kinter Avenue too. Sorry, and the zebra crossing location, the western end of Menzies, is that in the right place, or where should that actually go? Or if you can't answer that empirically, perhaps give us some guidance about the process you've used to come to that answer. So is that, see, have I missed anything in that summing up?
No, I've got all those notes, so...
Okay, thank you. So I'll pull us back to formal meeting proceedings.
Just if we do, if it's laid on the table, it disappears.
No, it stays until we deal with it.
Because if we have to deal with it next month.
We can see.
Yeah, we don't need to move anything, do we?
No.
No, you don't need to move anything.
If it gets voted down, that's worse.
No. Sorry, my question was that so we're not moving it, which means it disappears off the agenda.
Until it comes back to...
No, it was on the agenda, but it doesn't get moved.
Right. So it doesn't reappear on next month's agenda in this form.
Well,
I just want to know the process, that's all.
in terms of process, I'm correct if I'm wrong. If we don't move it, it doesn't need a formal motion to let it lie on the table. It just doesn't get moved. Okay, it doesn't get adopted and become part of the debate. If we've received the report, we've done nothing with it. That's our opportunity. CEO's indicated as soon as it comes to the next council meeting, there's no impediment to that. Yep. So we would expect that we'd see it next month. If someone wishes to move in general business to make sure it comes next month, then you can do that as well. I don't need to. You don't see it on the agenda next time, you might want to ask a question without notice. So I'll move us back into formal meeting proceedings. No one's going to move that item. We'll move on to the next item. Which I have as the 19.3, the Local Government Association Annual General Meeting Notices of Motion, pages 140 to 142, with the recommendations on 140 and 41. Now I've withdrawn this item because I want to recommend a rewording of item 6. Oh, it's item 7 gone. Sorry, in the yellow is the alternate wording on item 6. I what the proposed wording kind of didn't quite get to explain what we're on about. So if you just have a look at the new word. Oh, it's too busy.
Yeah, oh, sorry, 1 4. Yeah.
You don't need the words in recognition. Oh, this is, alright. This is different what we mentioned. So hang on, let me just pull up my words and we'll... There with us a second.
So local government and 29%, I don't, is that word right?
It should be current in brackets, isn't it? Currently 29%.
I had this all well thought through, elected members. Sorry, this hasn't translated. Bear with us. That the annual general meeting requests the LGA to work in partnership with its key stakeholders in order to address the low representation of women in local government, currently 29%, comma after government, and comma after 29%, yet compared to the proportion of women in society, currently 51% of the population. That's better. Yeah, so look at that word.
Yes, mate.
People okay with that one? Yep. So we go back up to the top, and you have the resolution here in front of you, items 1 to 7, and I'm advised that the LGA will be looking for these to be separate, which means you need to move them in parts, but we can have a common mover and a common seconder for the lot. We move the lot. Councillor Barnett, just move it. Would you speak?
Yes, just move it. I think that these are. I had a couple of emails back from some other women elected members saying great leadership, and so I'm very happy to move all of these, and hope they get proper discussion that on the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And seconded, Councillor Harris, would you speak to it?
Yes. I just wanted to second it, but in second I wanted to just endorse some things, as it'll be you or the Deputy Mayor that will be there at the time talking, it won't be us, and I had some questions asked of me prior to this happening. Without going through them all, I definitely want to support the things that Christina, or my co-counsel alongside me, has put up, particularly with the Benny one, previous woman thing, and I think history is very good. I'm saddened that we put up one motion in here, or one policy we're going to put up, is the number 4 one about the breastfeeding, and I always find that terrible as a society that we have to actually make words to make people equal, and I find it should just have been, and I think at this council, and there's only a couple of us here that might breastfeed, or maybe not, I don't know, but if we came to that we'd have someone jump up and say, oh, that's not right and this isn't right. So to me it's a little bit upsetting that you've got to put these, but in reality I totally agree we should do it. The one I want to just briefly comment on is the 2 one about the treaty. I am very, very proud and happy that our council is going to hopefully put that up to get passed, because I had a comment made to me, and it couldn't have been with this, it was about this, but I've only seen this since Thursday night, that the person that raised it with, oh, well, we don't have many Aborigines left living in the city, and I think a while ago it was about a 2% or 2.5%, and could even be even less now, sort of thing. And I found it sort of a bit thoughtful when it was said to me, and the reason I'm so happy with it is the land, and you've said it at the beginning of tonight's meeting, the land we stand on belong to a people. We moved them on, and whether there's only 1 left or 1,000 left or 10,000 left, I think it's very important to have a treaty with those people. And if we can do it, I'd be so proud of this council as a first beyond other councils. So I'm happy to second the whole lot, particularly the breastfeeding and the recognition of Benny and the other women, but particularly the stand we're hopefully going to take on the Aboriginal question.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Okay, just from the chair, I'm gobsmacked. This is a great list. It's the longest list we've had from our city to go to a general meeting. And these things, I think, one and all of them are really meaningful improvements to our lot as local government, and I think to the community. I agree with Councillor Harris. I think the issue of asking for a treaty at our level is a new one. I don't know why we haven't thought of it before. It's like all those great ideas. You think, why did it take us so long to have that idea? Well, anyway, we've had it now. I'm not sure where it'll go, but I think it's a really fertile area for a debate, at the very least. Why can't we have a treaty with the Kaurna people? And why can't that be meaningful? And why can't they mean something meaningful for our whole community, not just us in this room? And that would be a great discussion for us to have with our community about what that could mean and what part they might play in that. I think it's a great opportunity for a really meaningful discussion about how we reconcile our past, more recent past with our ancient past, which is something that I'm always interested in trying to progress. The issue about Grace Benny, incredibly important. I heard from the president of the Australian Local Government Women's Association how they were celebrating the second woman in politics in Australia. I thought, hang on a minute, we don't have plans to do that with the first woman in politics in Australia, and that's here in South Australia. And I just think it's such a golden opportunity to remind people that this is the first place in the world to grant women the right to vote and to run for office. It wasn't the first place to enact that because New Zealand had an election before us, but it was the first place in the world to grant that right. And here we have the very first woman in Australia in our midst, not on our council, down at Holdfast, or Brighton back in those days. And I think it's a really, really important occasion in history to celebrate and make a big deal about. So, and I think we should have a bit of fun with it too. So it's not just some kind of boring story on a Sunday. So I think I will encourage you to have a bit of fun with it. And the other thing that I'm kind of really frustrated about, I've tried, and I know a number of people in this room have tried to increase the level of women on councils generally and here, and we've found it really, really difficult. And I can't, I'm sure we all could tell stories about what we've done and why it didn't work and wah. We've just got to fix it. We've just got to do something that fixes it. We wouldn't be happy if we sat here and didn't have representatives of people who are parents of kids of school age. We'd say we're missing a whole sector of the community and we need to fix it. We wouldn't be happy if we didn't have anyone here over 50 or anyone here under 30. We'd think that they were deficiencies that needed to be resolved, and we wouldn't necessarily bring laws in about it, but we'd work really hard to find people to run and help them get on board so that we could have a good representation on our council. And we'd feel good if we had a spread of ages across our council, we'd have a pretty healthy council. Well, I don't think we can really be a healthy council in terms of representation until we have all those demographics covered up. And I look around the room and I think about people who have arrived, since the Irish and the English arrived. I don't see that represented well amongst us either. So we've got a lot of work to do. But I'm particularly proud to be able to talk on your behalf about this one, should you support it, about what we do to continually keep the pressure on getting female representation to be somewhat closer, if not bang on, 51%, because I think that's what our community would expect. And it was great to hear tonight from the cricket club that they're also dealing with that. And great to hear the football club go, yep, interesting. Something that they need to take on board in their own time. Hopefully these get up, and I'd be really proud to speak on each and every one of them to the general meeting and see if we can be successful with all of them and influence the agenda for the whole local government and the community going forward. Thank you. Any further debate on this side? No, Councillor Barnett, wish to sum up? Concludes debate. All those in favour? Sorry, hang on. I'm going to do it again. To take it in parts, it was in favour of part 1. Carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 2? Carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 3? Carried unanimously. Part 4, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 5? Carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 6? Carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 7? Sorry, I have to do that again. All those in favour of part 7?
Oh, yeah, I'm just reading part 7. Haven't noticed.
Yeah. Alright. The rest of us took the last 4 days. All those in favour of part 7? Sorry, can I do this again? I think you'll all be paying attention, right? All those in favour of part 7? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And I really deeply enjoyed that, Joanna. Thank you. But, you know, we've got to get it right. Okay, thank you for that. The next one was 19.6, connecting Prosperity to the Main North Road by development of the Clayton Church Homes site on page 218. Councillor Harris, just a brief reason why you withdrew it.
Long time ago. Well, you can't make up stories as you go along, such as life. The only reason I wanted to withdraw it, and I'll actually end up moving if necessary as well, unless someone else wishes to, is just to point out some of the summary and some of the discussions to get there. So I can move it unless someone...
Yeah, I'm happy to move it. Thank you. I should have asked you. Yep, carry on.
Hey, or do you want to do it?
No, I have a question. You don't hand up for a question, then you go ahead and move.
No, let's move it. Councillor Harris, you far away.
Okay. I'm glad we see the recommendation coming in our wisdom to go, and I think it's the option B one that we've put in the, yes, the option B one, as I think at this stage the previous one, while good, was more glorified and things like that. But where my concern comes in some of the report, I look at it, when I go through it, not what's happened to Clayton Homes and the builder, what they're doing and things like that, but I see the things around that we've mentally made that decision where it's going to be a path. We're looking at shifting the lights. All this has to get passed by somebody else, but shifting the lights and seeing a walkway or a movement way through Burwood Avenue through into our previous discussion of that. So while I'm more than happy to support the shared path and going down that track, I'm just that little disturbed that later on we should be looking at the main road plan and various other things, because I am concerned of some of the parking that is looked at, both not just casually, but possibly permanently between the football people, because I read things and I believe we look at the cricket club was also a tenant as opposed to just the football club. And the last 2 games that we went there, it got, for those that do park around the back, there was a big conflict of traffic there, because some people thought you just keep, like the Cowboys and Indians, just make a big circle of cars and you didn't get through. So I did. I'm easy, I can get through anywhere, but the cars were pretty jammed. So I'm just concerned with the report a bit in respect of, I'm hoping that once this is done, it doesn't affect our thoughts on the main plan, main road plan, and the cross-city plan. But I still endorse that we have this shared area.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? I'll take a brief question from Councillor Lee while waiting for the second.
What exactly, where exactly is the $21,000 budget?
Thank you. Director.
Yeah, through the Mayor, just a real quick breakdown. About $15,000 in that order goes to that right-of-way space, and that's around putting, delineating the path with some paving and some treatments. The rest of the money goes to some entry statement work, encouraging a sense of arrival and also encouraging people to use that shared space. So
Do you mean signs to say walk through?
Signs, entry signs, and placed strategically to encourage people to use that space. And that's part of the connection, the east-west connection that we're trying to get through to that Oval precinct.
So is the Prospect Oval sign, is that what you mean, the point of entry? Is it just a simple sign, or is it actually a piece of artwork?
Through the Mayor, it is more of a piece of artwork here. In keeping, it's a more stylised signage than a traditional type of sign.
Are we able to get the report up on screen, or is that, because the images in the report are pretty small.
The what, sorry?
The pictures in the report are pretty small. It might help if we can. I think it's a good question. We've got 226. So if you can enlarge the right-hand side, enlarge the whole thing, but show us the right-hand side. And down the bottom. I'll just move it so you can just see the bottom of the screen. That's it. So above the word, where you see the Main North Road written on there, above the word main, is some different paving treatment. There's some angled walls, and then there's an archway. If you scroll down, Jazz, and scroll to the left. So there's the walls, the planters, and the sign. I presume, Director, that's what you're saying is the other part of the 51,000.
That's correct, mate.
Councillor, does that answer your question?
It answers that question.
I'm not sure whether you like the answer, but at least it's answered.
A lot of money.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Moved by Councillor Harris. Councillor Evans, would you speak to us?
Just briefly, and then to ask a question. I don't mind it. We do need to look at east-west movement, and we're not given a huge amount of opportunity to do that just with the general layout of Main North Road. The fact that this can be somewhat of a connecting intersection or a connecting interchange for the non-vehicle movement, moving east to west, is a real positive. And through the workshop, we were talking about the idea that an intersection could be lined up and that it could, I guess, feed into side streets that neighbour it on the east side as well. What happens with Memorial Gardens is a really interesting point, and what the whole, I guess, network looks like then when we talk about west of Main North Road as well is still an interesting point. The alternative is not to do this, I guess, and if we don't do this, what are our other opportunities to get east-west movement happening along Main North Road? Sure, there's still opportunities, but I think this one it makes sense. It's clearly in keeping with what we're thinking of doing overall with the Memorial Gardens master plan. And I guess there's an opportunity to also signpost what's happening on Prospect Oval. It's really important as well to get some visibility happening for the space more broadly. So I'm in favour of it for those reasons, and it'll be very interesting to see what comes of it. In terms of the 51,000, we did talk about that being reallocated from the asset management plan into this project, and I noticed that this recommendation talks about a budget variation. So is it going to be funded through a budget variation, or would we look to revise, I think, footpath works along Main North Road for part of it?
I'll take that question. Director?
Through the Mayor, originally it was talked about realigning some of the asset management money around footpath reconstruction. We saw at this juncture that it would be a lot easier to move it as a budget variation because of the nature of the work and the way that we'd be capitalising those elements. As you see, that there is a small portion of footpath that might very well be aligned to the footpath replacement program, but some of the signage and walls, it wouldn't be that clean to actually allocate it to that funding. It's very different in nature as far as reconstructing a footpath.
Sure. So I guess just to finish up, then I'd still support it. It is a sum of money. It's a reasonable sum of money to look at spending. The important point I think to note with that as well is it's part of the Clayton Church redevelopment. So if we were going to do our own walkway off our own back, it would be more than $51,000. It would be the full 200 and something that's listed in the report. So I guess in some respects we are getting somewhat of an economy of scale through adopting this approach as well. So on that basis, we're prepared to support it.
Councillor Crook,
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just picking up where Councillor Evans left off to a degree in terms of the cost. My question was really in relation to our capacity to absorb a $51,000 budget variation, particularly given we're not even through quarter one yet. And I guess I'm feeling a little frustrated that this is coming to us so early in the financial year. It's not been part of our deliberations prior to budget being settled. And I know it's a timing issue, it's an unfortunate timing issue, but I'm really interested in our capacity, maybe to the Director of Corporate Services, our capacity to absorb a $51,000 budget variation this early on.
Director?
The Chair, the budget that Council has adopted for this financial year presents approximately $283,000 deficit, operating deficit. Assuming the whole $51,000 is capital expenditure, that will not have any impact on our operating result. In terms of Council's capacity to fund it, $50,000 we are able to absorb from our working capital, but that may mean some deferment in some. We may be able to, absorb it in our current working capital. It may mean that we may need to reconstruct our borrowing at different times.
So it may have an impact in interest payments.
If we need to borrow and not able to manage within our working capital.
And depreciation.
Depreciation will be the following year.
Gift that keeps on giving, really. My next question was going to be about depreciation. Do you have a sense of what that would look like in terms of dollar figure?
Assuming this is all, if it's all capital, in terms of footpaths usually we depreciate about 30, 40 years. In terms of the structure, signage, 10, 15 years, that's our depreciation. Yes. So that will be the amount divided into those two numbers.
And so just so I'm really, really clear, is it going to be a budget variation or is it going to be a deferral of other works and absorbed into the capital budget? Because I'm not clear from the answer as to which one's going to be.
This report proposed a budget variation, which means it's asking council for additional $51,000. This is the report.
Sorry, can I just ask that to be clarified? Because when the question was asked, can we afford it? The answer was it won't have an impact on the operating result.
That's right.
So why do we need to be asked to fund an extra $51,000? I think I know the answer, but I'd like you to say it properly.
Yep. So in the next year's borrowing, we have budgeted to borrow about $3.5 million in our next year's borrowing. So with this, and that is to pay off our the capital works that we have and also our principal repayment. So if this is an additional $50,000 that we may need to borrow to fund for all our works, but should we able to manage it within our working capital, we may delay our borrowing, just like what we have done in the past financial year, where we delay our borrowing and that will save our interest. So it is all timing issue and about treasury management, how we actually fund that. It is additional resource that we need, that we don't have to fund that.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, I think I get it. I think I understand it. My last question, just from a financial point of view, is if we're borrowing the money, presumably we're then paying interest on that money that we're borrowing. So the true cost will be more than $51,000. Is that a fair question? Was my logic correct? Maybe is the question.
Correct. If everything being equal, if everything being equal, and if we have to borrow $51,000, yes, and our interest rate currently is about 4%.
So look, I'm as I said, I'm sort of. I feel like we're a little bit. I think we're going to be forced to make a decision on this tonight, obviously, in the sense that we need to do something for the walkway. I weigh up the $51,000 plus interest plus depreciation, which might equal a number slightly higher than $50,000 over the long term, for what is effectively 12 football games a year and then cricket games through the year as well. So in terms of actual usage as we have it now, it's very limited. And if we have this or we just have it half or we have something else, people who know that that's where they're going will find it anyway. I think Councillor Evans' point is really valid one. It's about what we try to do in the future. And I guess that's the only reason why I support this is not because I'm interested in the current usage, because I think it's quite likely we could do other things. but in terms of how this then integrates with the broader plan of Main North Road, the broader debate around east-west. I'm not very happy about the money. I think it's a lot of money for a few bricks and a bit of copper, but I don't work in the industry, so I presume that's what it is. But it just feels like a lot of money for something that will have to be there anyway, irrespective of whether we pay for it or Church Homes, Clayton Church Homes does. It's a real shame, just to put on public record, that we don't have a greater use of that entire site. I think it's a really absolute missed opportunity in that part of Main North Road, around the Oval, in its entirety, and so it would have been good to have seen something broader, but of course that's not the topic of this paper, so I won't talk about it. Thank you.
Councillor Barnett.
Yes, it's really come to us as an opportunity because of the Clayton Homes rebuild. So that's how it came to us. And I'm really pleased that this has most probably, in a sense, forced us more to have a think about what are we doing on our Main North Road, which we're calling a boulevard. Well, this, I think, has really, if it looks like this, it will be fantastic. And I just pick up on some of the little art concepts that if you look at what's proposed, the Prospect Oval design, and it picks up a lot of the design features from our Memorial Gardens playground. So I like that idea. That it's sort of it's got some of that linking going on it through design. Also, I think in our quest for environmental sustainability and all that, I hate to think what it would have been if Clayton Homes hadn't come to us and if our team hadn't used their imagination a bit. Boring old, asphalt car park, ho-hum, doesn't say anything about one of our, jewels in our crown that we keep on talking about, Prospect Oval. We just come from talking with the football and the cricket from our council dinner with them, and they've got some exciting plans. So I think, this is an opportunity that's come to us, and we should grasp it. And hopefully that we'll have something that says more about who we are and what we are on what is a very dull and ordinary Main North Road. So I think if we've got plans for the future, this has come to us sort of a bit out of the blue. I think we should take the opportunity.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Lowe.
Overall I support it. It looks a little bit, the design that's been sort of put forward, option B, looks a little bit like a glorified car park, and I don't know whether there's been a lot of yeah, and I don't know whether there's been any thought put into a mixed use idea of space activation on game days, and so we're aware of what happens outside Adelaide Oval on game days, and they create a fantastic atmosphere which all adds to people's experience. And I don't know whether this facilitates the opportunity to do that. If it does, then I think we should investigate that and look to leverage that opportunity. And if it doesn't, I think that not enough detailed thought has been put into the solution. And there are other, I guess, connecting factors to this, such as getting more people to come to the football that way by negotiating with whoever runs the buses, to put more buses on, to bring people there, to make it a real game day atmosphere and things like that. So I think, we've probably had to do something, but I don't know how much broader thought has been put into, second and third benefits that we could get as a result of this. So if it's not too late, I'd encourage the team to have a bit of a think about that, and maybe even next Tuesday we could have a workshop. Oh no, not next Tuesday. We could put some thought into negotiating with the Clayton Homes guys, the football club, etc., and coming up with some collaborative plans to really turn this into something which no other suburban football grounds are doing, and create some atmosphere and some excitement, and get people to come along and really get involved, and maybe increase attendance to get it back up to where it was before it dipped. Anyway, that's my points.
Councillor Lee?
I have another question. How optimistic is the walkway connection be outside season, football season?
Through the Mayor, we haven't got that data as yet, but what we see and what this is a visioning exercise that if we do build such a strategic link, it will only encourage people to use it, especially from the east. And look, picking up on Councillor Larwood's comments, there's a whole heap of activities that we can do around this to make it a primary focus or a conduit to that precinct. But it is being treated as a catalyst site to encourage that people movement to that. It is the first of many to come along North Road, hopefully.
I guess I'm just a little cranky because it's such an underdeveloped site. It's a 5-story site. They this is a question to you. So we talk about it's a boring old road and stuff. Well, Clayton Homes hasn't really contributed much to anything other than a 2-story development, which is really disappointing because it could have been such a fabulous site. And now we're giving them effectively $51,000 to make their boring old site look a little bit flash, and I'm just really annoyed by that. I get what the director's saying. I get the strategic plan around getting people to go down there and use that site, but I think I'm just really annoyed with Clayton Homes that they've underbanked the site and wouldn't play ball with us. And that's going to be there for a jolly long time, and it's such a missed opportunity. I'm still in two minds as to which way I'm going to vote on this, but I should vote with my head and not my heart, and not with my bad temper, that's for sure. So I get what staff are planning. It's just really not anything that's been said. It's just the whole concept.
Thank you. From the chair, it's certainly an interesting project, and we've had a lot of debate about this project. To something that looks simple, this is not simple. And I'm really, I have to say, Director and CEO, really disappointed in how this has come to us. I don't think we've been engaged in the process. I don't think it's looked at the east-west connections across the city. I think the east-west connections that are nominated in the report, the nice groovy-looking circle, are not ones that I support. I'm not sure that the councillors who live over that way would support the way those east-west connections are drawn at the moment, big red lines in the wrong streets. I think the logic about shifting the pedestrian crossing here is the wrong location. There's so much about this report just I find that could have been dealt with a lot better had we been asked as locals what we think would work. I also think some of the feedback tonight's made me think absolutely spot on. Why isn't there a plan about how to get from this gate to Flora Terrace through Menzies? And why isn't that plan showing how you get around the oval with an upgraded walking path to link up the zebra crossings and the pedestrian zone that you were director proposing on Menzies Crescent earlier? You've got two projects either side of Prospect Oval, and it just seems to me that whoever's come up with those two reports has not spoken to each other at all, and I just can't understand it. I think it's an opportunity lost. So I just wanted to, this might be a rant, and I just hope, CEO, I implore that we join up our thinking with our very talented staff and direct them and manage them better to do things that engage us and are useful to us, get them in the budget process like they should be, like every one of us slaves away at getting things in the budget process and argues about every single dollar. Here's something that comes to us vision well over 100,000, just to do in a budget variation. Now it's 51, again it's a budget variation. I mean, that doesn't help us resolve a really good joined up solution. It makes people uncomfortable. You can see that, I can certainly see it. Now, having said all that, we have a right of way over this land. It means two things. One is, a former council owned this land and sold it. It's very important to know that. So in terms of us controlling it, activating it, making it a funky plaza, unless we buy it back, we can't control that. We have to allow the parking on the site as it's drawn, because that's what the planning approval obliges them to do, and now we are a reciprocal right is we have to let them park there even on match days. So the activation can't happen in the car park without Clayton Church Homes blessing, to use that word again, but they've got an operation to run. So I think we've just got to understand that if we want to activate it, it's got to be in the oval area, and there's plenty of space inside the gates to do that, but we don't see how that could work right here. The second part about a right of way is that even though we don't own it, we enjoy the access across it, and at some level we're therefore obliged to contribute to the cost of providing that access. And if you don't understand that or think that's unreasonable, have a look at that really messy right of way arrangements behind the shops on Mainland Road up by Regency Road, where everybody says it's not my fault, it's not my problem. It's a shared right of way, no one wants to pay for it. I don't think that's our role. We should be a good corporate citizen, good civic citizen, and play our role in maintaining rights of way that our citizens enjoy. So there is a cost at some level to upgrade and make sure that it's a safe surface. So we're up for some cost. And I think there should be some marking on Mainland Road for this entry to the oval. It is a bit hidden away, so I don't regret at all us spending a bit of money to create an entranceway that has some prominence. And I agree with Councillor Barnett. I really like the artwork, that organic form that ties in with the playground. I think it's a really good theme that's emerging there. But again, I'd kind of like to see that as a joined up discussion about how that works in that east-west connection. And it seems to be serendipitous rather than planned. So, I've said enough about that. I'm going to leave that with the CEO to keep working through. But as it is at the moment, I'm glad the staff revisited it. I think they've done a good job in doing so. I think they've cut the costs to our contribution, given we want the entry statement is fairly modest, and I support the design and the cost, although I'm supporting it reluctantly, given that it's so budget variation so early in the year. Any further debate on this item? Councillor Stan.
Yeah, just one question. I mean, there was a lot of talk about the opportunity of, maybe combining the two projects, one at the front and one at the rear of Prospect Oval. Is there any wriggle room on the timing on this? Do we have to make a decision tonight, or could we actually just go back and revisit and just have the two authors of the two separate reports? Just one report is already coming back. Could the other report be delayed and, come up with a better solution?
There is some urgency given the other things under construction, but Director, can you give some guidance?
Yeah, through the Mayor, there is urgency. They're out there breaking ground at the moment, they're constructing it. But the point has been taken that it is not too late to link the two projects, even if you do approve this project tonight. We will get the urban strategists onto it to say that this right of way is going to be there, whether we like it or not. That is a given. So we can work towards linking that plan through the precinct across to amenities quite easily. It's not too late.
Okay. Thank you. So you have your answer. Anything further, Councillor?
No, I think the intent is there.
Okay. That concludes debate, not because I asked everyone to speak. Everyone's spoken. There are no more people to speak. Councillor Harris, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, I will look at the clock to make sure that there is 5 minutes if necessary, because it's like selling something I'll sell a vegetarian food and I don't eat it. This is a good proposal. I'd like to take on board what a few people have said going through. Going to the real last one first is, it's happening now, the construction's on, the earth's turned, buildings happen, and it's going to happen. And so this is our only chance of having 2 bobs worth in doing it. I go here to my council along here that pointed to possibly, having the party atmosphere and stalls and all that sort of thing. It is a car park, or will be a car park, and the hospital will be running even if there's a football match or cricket match, so it will be sort of happening. The one great thing in the picture I got, and I think you people have got it on your iPads, is there's the yellow lines out the front, the bus stop's further up the road, and the crossing at the moment's up here, so if someone sees it and stops, they'll most probably get hit in the rear end. So the only people, and I do, and last 20 years gone to the football, you would get people from Burwood Avenue, not all, because they also come around the other way, and a few from California Street, but the bulk still come around. So, good opening, people can see it as they go past and then turn the corner and come around. So it has that thing. I do have a couple of little worries while moving it. It came up in the library discussion that some of the councillors talked about people being nervous and having a fear of nighttime, or not so much nighttime, of being in areas. And lucky enough, I suppose, I don't usually have those fears. But where this is coming now, where it's going into the Oval, apart from the 10 days, and I've generally always seen the gate locked. I'm assuming once this will happen, they might leave the gate unlocked. But when you come into the Oval on a non-football day or non-cricket day or non-practice day or something like that, I'm not sure for the next couple of years where you're going to go. You're going to end up on the Oval, take off around the back where the trees and all that sort of stuff are, or take off, it's apart from those couple of matches we have, and we have a few, 10, make it sound bigger, 10 and the cricket, so maybe 15 Saturdays, something like that. At the moment it will be a road to nowhere. But I'm urging people still to support it, because it'll be really nice walking across that bitumen on a football day to go there. But I'm hoping that we will support it in the effect that our good staff that the Mayor mentioned, when they get things together and get the other end together and look at cross pathing, coming from one side of the city to the other and all that, that hopefully it will fit in. I just can't think of anything good to say. It's got nice trees in the picture, which are actually not as good as the original picture down the bottom that have got the trees currently. But I believe, unfortunately, it has to be done because it fits in to the hospital, and we don't want to lose that right away to come through. We can open up 10 Farmley gates again, use some WD-40, get a bit of it moving, and it might open up a gateway from us to you people on this side of the road. Thank you.
Respect for the Ken Farmer gates.
Yeah. Better down there, thank you.
Thank you. The statement concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Unanimously.
Oh, should have had one
Yeah,
go.
the trees.
Sorry, I don't know if the trees are still there that aren't alive still, but I'm sure
I think they're all gone.
they're gone. You won't worry about saving them anymore. Okay, thank you. The next item was the response to the Local Government Association circulars, and with brief reasons, sorry, Deputy Mayor, I believe wanted to get some feedback.
I think so. It was also a long time ago. But these are two really important circulars and papers. I think it would be good to get some feedback in chambers, or the opportunity to do it outside of chamber.
Thank you. Noting to the members that the response date is before the next council meeting, so we don't have the opportunity to bring a report back for a resolution before sending it off. Hence the request to delegate to the CEO. My discussions with the CEO kind of led to the conclusion that it would be good to hear from the members tonight, so the CEO can make sure your points are included in the response that you may well approve to delegate to her in a couple of minutes. So I thought it was worth speeding the procedures for 10 minutes or so, say 9 o'clock. I think we need to do that to enable some discussion. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried. Importantly, one of these items was raised by us at the last general meeting, so I think it's pretty important we respond to that one. Does anybody have any feedback about that in terms of disability employment targets? Anything that you want to ask the CEO to include in our response?
I'll start. I will download the crowd off to do so. Look, this is a really important one, and it's one that we can support. I think kind of a year ago now at the LGA AGM. I thought the paper prepared by the LGA was actually not bad. It did include some really positive reasons why we should look at targets in the local government sector.
Look, beyond anything else, I would just be supportive of us as a council saying this is a really important thing to do, and it's important for a number of reasons, and that we really should be pushing for targets across the local government sector. Targets are, when this was moved to the LGO, I moved it at the time, voting delegates at that particular meeting, there was some hesitation for a seconder. I think Campbelltown in the end seconded the motion. And then there was actually some good support for it, and I think most people, if not all, voted for it. But I think there was some trepidation about, well, what does that mean for us? Does that mean we need to change everything in our building, or what's the cost on us as an organisation to set a target? So I think one of the important things to do is to say there is support for organisations where they employ people with disability, and so you're not just sort of left on your own to do that. So there is support and assistance, practical assistance to do that.
Financial support.
And financial support as well. The other issue is around targets, and certainly looking at percentages rather than numbers. Percentages are much more meaningful for organisations, if they're big or small, it's about a percentage rather than an actual number. There was a report released just in the last couple of weeks by the Commissioner for Discrimination, and she talked about discrimination in the workforce for people with disability, and I think it would be good maybe to reference that. I can send that reference through to the CEO if that's useful. And even a copy of it. I think that would be useful to talk about, because that talks about a lot of people's experiences in the workplace who have a disability and what it means to try and get into paid work and barriers they face. But also it talked very positively about the contribution that can be made to people with disability, and I think that's the other part of this equation. We're not really doing anyone a favour here. This isn't about actually getting people with good skills who can then make a really good contribution to an organisation, and in this case to the sector, local government. So I think we should support it. I thought there's some talk about some examples in some other companies, ANZ, Australian Post, state government, Commonwealth government also has it. There's lots of material that can be used, amended and lifted for the local government sector, so they don't have to start from scratch. So it's a pretty easy way of doing that. And having a bit of a strategy is a really good starting point for the sector. I don't think people will necessarily jump onto it and say, yes, we'll do it straight away. I think having a plan on how to do it is probably a really good approach. So anyway, my sort of comments on that.
Yep. Any others? I'd just like to encourage that our response stimulates debate and action around it not just being office-bound tasks, that it's a broad kind of remit. You might think, well, I know it's a disabled person going to ride a lawnmower. Well, they probably drove to work in a car with hand controls, so good enough to drive on the road, won't be good enough to drive equipment, and we should think through that carefully, what's wrong with that. I think often we think disabled people come in wheelchairs, so as long as you've got ramps and lifts and it's all tickety-boo, you might need to modify the desk. I just think that's so restricted in how in its thinking. There are some people who are incredibly good with IT because it's such an enabler for them, and maybe fabulous trainers, in the digital hub. People can work in the library and do all sorts of tasks maybe they can't reach up all the shelves, but there's a lot of other things that can be done. So I just encourage the report to say that we want it to be thought of really very, very broadly. And of course there's so many different types of disability. I think there are 5 official classifications for housing requirements, but there's lots of different disabilities. I think if you've seen the ad for the Rio Games, it's an incredible ad. I think it's one of the best ones going. There's so many different people doing amazing things with all different disabilities. I think that's a good starting point for us to think about what people might come to us with. In terms of an obligation, I'm not quite sure how we deal with that and whether we've got targets or how we, so there need to be some discussion around how we transition from where we're at. It'd be good for us to have some data. I'm looking at the report, unless I missed something, I couldn't quite see what our current participation level is in local government. So it might be good for us to start benchmarking that.
Look, we do have that. I don't have it with me, but I used that on the day. I can perhaps send that through again to the CEO if that's useful.
Local government?
Yep. Manager of government.
Oh, it's in the motion that we put up, is it? Right, okay.
I'm not sure if it's in the motion, but it's certainly in my
So 2.9 of the public sector, does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Is that of our public sector, local government?
I think that was actually the state public sector.
Yeah, so I think.
No, I think there were figures from local government.
Right, okay.
I'll try and chase it down.
So I think it'd be good for us to track what we're doing, so we don't kind of, state government does really well, we're in the numbers, we don't get a full sense of security that we're doing okay. We should absolutely know if we're doing okay or not. I guess that, the last point I'll make is that sometimes we're a good place to try things out in local government because we're a bit more flexible and our community cares a bit more about this stuff that's coal-based. That's why we have a higher percentage of green power purchase. That's why we recycle our waste even though it costs more money. And those sort of things matter to us more, and I would have thought this is a space where we might be able to have some stretch targets which show us taking a bit of a leadership role rather than a following role. So good to see the paper deal with that. Any other comments on the disability employment one? Okay, we'll move to the other one, which is communities impacted by domestic violence. Christine?
Yes, I couldn't quickly find my email that I'd sent previously about some of the low cost or even free things that councils, even this council, could do. I had a quick look at where we display things, and not one single item about domestic violence or where you go. Yeah, nothing. And there are just some simple things like having the phone number on the council's website permanently, the respect, whatever. So I think councils, a lot of them say, all more cost and blah, blah, blah. Well, there are some, free things that you can actually do, or cheap things. I'll just read to you from the Attorney General, South Australian Government, put out a domestic violence discussion paper, and so just so that again, I think I can just see some people saying, it's not our problem, it's a state government problem or whatever. So domestic violence is a complex problem that affects a significant number of people in our community. In 2015 alone, there were more than 8,000 reported occasions of domestic violence in South Australia. Victims of domestic violence of government and non-government access government and non-government services, so they access our services too. They go to work, they come from a variety of backgrounds. Data tells us that victims of domestic violence are predominantly women and their children. So the South Australian Government recognises gender inequality as a root cause of domestic violence. It's also recognised that Aboriginal women and girls are more likely to be victims of domestic violence than other women and girls in Australia. Every member of our community can play a role in changing attitudes and breaking down the gender norms and stereotypes that lead to gender-based violence. So I think that links quite well with some of our motion and that were put up to the LGA as well. Perhaps we're on the track of trying to help reduce the gender-based inequality. And similar with our disability employment targets, if you could say the same sort of process applies there, and the inequality that happens if you happen to have whatever form of disability you have. I'll relook up my other email and just forwarded that again because there are some other.
I think Kay's got it. We're looking at the whole pile of stuff highlighted here in yellow. Okay, thank you. Anything further, Mark?
Just two things. One, in the LGA report, it talked about domestic violence is probably taken broadly to include violence against women. I think that should be challenged. I don't think it is just about women. I think it can be children, it can be men as well. I actually struggle with the terminology being so specific. It's all ages, but I just think I think having that definition just is a little bit too restrictive. So that's in the So that's in their discussion paper. So I'm not sure if others would agree or disagree with that. That's just my personal view. The second thing is often when we talk about domestic violence, we always talk about domestic violence happening to someone else. It's never somebody else or very, very personalised. I think a really good starting point for local government, and maybe through enterprise bargaining arrangements, is to look at domestic violence leave, which has recently been introduced by the state government and also the Commonwealth government. I think that's a really tangible thing because domestic violence doesn't discriminate on, I think, age, gender, ethnicity, social status. It's something that can affect anybody in the community. And that includes people working with local government. So I think a really tangible expression would also be to look at having that provision within. I'm not sure how you do that, but I mean, again, we can trailblaze by just doing it, or it might have to be something that needs to be done industrially. But either way, I think it'd be, again, personal view would be a good intent to do that.
Yes, I don't know about the previous meeting, but I'm assuming we stand because it's council.
I've suspended meeting proceedings.
Oh!
Actually, you're right. No, you were spot on because.
Yeah, because I looked at the time.
Yeah, look at the time. Yeah. A time-honoured councillor you are, and you brought it to my attention, councillor, back in formal meeting proceedings. I seek your indulgence, we'll seek leave of the meeting to extend the suspension of meeting proceedings until 9:15. Should we need it? All those in favour? Against is carried. And now it is stand.
Okay. This one I can remember when we first started raising it here, and not when we first started because some of us have been raising it for years, but in this recent bout when we first started raising it, my views might have been a bit different than others, and I think it's really good that they look at all these different laws and movements to do things, but I try in my head to look at practical things, and seeing we're out of the thing, Christina raised one very important one straight off that we can do for almost nothing is have various telephone numbers, a card or things like this and to put up. And I was lucky, or I suppose I was definitely unlucky enough to experience in the street week before last the compilation we're talking about now, and I looked at it a little bit different and it got settled fairly quick. But in the big picture, I think councils and other places, but particularly there should be an area, and I'm only thinking of the front desk, someone comes in, generally it's a woman, it doesn't have to be, but generally a woman or a child comes in and I'm having problems, and particularly with a partner, and it's getting a bit out of hand. There should be somewhere that doesn't endanger anyone else that says, and Terry at the desk, says, Mary, come with me and just sit in this room. We'll ring the police, and not get that 100% involved in it, but just come here where you're safe. We'll ring that police.
Some procedure and space.
Yes, and that could be the same in the library, or it could be the same in schools. It could be in a lot of. So I think councils can look at that sort of setup. Look at, as I said, like Christina raised, the telephone setup. And another important one that I think is important, that doesn't take much, but it can come important, particularly in violent sort of stuff, is I can walk along, and I'm walking along and I'll say I'm a woman, and walking along with my husband, and I know he's going to give me a hiding when I get home and I'm a bit too frightened, I can't ring up and all that. There's a box in the local government area, there's a box in the library and that, I can drop my name and address in, and I don't have to worry about someone, my husband seeing me, why are you ringing that person, why are you doing that? I'm just that little bit disappointed that in the practical, right at the moment situation, that some of these things haven't got there. Because it's all good to look at things, and it is all good to look at things afterwards to sort out problems and all that. But some of us here have seen people that have got a decent hide and it's a bit late afterwards. And there's particularly with women, and doesn't really have to be a race, but particularly with Aboriginal women that I know, they know if they go and sit down and start talking away, they're going to get the next hiding tomorrow morning. So I think we could have looked a bit, not we as individuals, but we as a group, at more practical things. We do a Donald Trump and all carry guns and sort it out, but I don't agree with that one, to be honest. But, something practical, be able to help someone that's in a situation then and there. So a couple of those sort of ideas I think should be in there as well, or should be part of it.
I've got a couple of things I'd like to be explored. One is kind of downstream, I guess, after the event, where we strike and they're in some sort of supported accommodation. It'd be good for us to talk to them or talk to people who work with them and say, what would you expect from your local council, or what would you like to see from your local community, as opposed to the government department or the police or whatever, which is not us, but what as those people become a bit less frightened and go to walk outside, how would they like to be supported? Is there some gaps? Is there something we're not doing that we could be doing that's easy or hard, whatever? But talk to people who've been victims and understand their needs firsthand. And we've got Lutheran Community Care on 3rd Avenue and Central Domestic Violence at basically they operate all over the place. I'm sure it's easy to find someone to chat to. The other is upstream, and the conversation about female change rooms at the Oval. It was really, and we have such a short time over dinner to discuss these things, but it just rings bells with me to think, we've got to get some of that stuff sorted, and how much of that stuff is about empowering women so they don't feel like a second-class citizen, and so the council should look at their own facilities and try and work out if there's a clear lack of delineation or a clear lack of promotion of one gender over another, wherever possible, that there's not that there's equality and it's obvious. And probably for us, but to go on the paper as well, what are councils doing in offering services to young women and middle-aged and older as they are with young blokes and so on and so forth. So look at our sporting program and who we have leases with. I know this is what we discussed at Charles Kane Reserve. It was a real issue for council that we signed up clubs. I know Matt's present here, but clubs that had an approach to having females included in the program. It's really important to us. And I think it ties into this issue integrally, that builds equality and respect, and hopefully in time that leads to respect in the domestic situation as well. So if we can think about both the victims' outcomes and also the investment right up front when kids are at school and beyond that, what's our role to provide facilities that work with that and programs as well. Christina?
Just quickly,
You're right.
I'm just thinking, when you said about the properties and that councils have, when you think of it must be thousands of toilets that councils have, control over, I guess. And I don't know about the men, but you go in on the back of the door, and quite often they have something more about health, but, you could equally have some sticker on a door that has information about it, just something practical.
I think Alan was thinking that there might be some unsolicited informal artwork on the back of the door.
That's what I think.
But no, we don't have that at our doors, Councillor, because
right.
we pay our staff well and they detect those things and deal with them.
Okay, that's good.
Anything further on that one? There's been some really good discussion. Kate, just conscious you've been making notes. Have you got any questions of any of that at all? Or is it pretty right?
Well, thank you. No, I think we're pretty right. There have been some questions posed in the paper, and we'll certainly take your response and provide that detail. I think certainly the response is much more comprehensive than potentially just the questions that asked. Pretty happy. And look, if we've got further questions, I might email out any further queries if necessary in order to complete it.
Okay, thank you. There's no further contributions, so it's forced back into formal meeting procedures, noting that this recommendation is simply to delegate the preparation of the response and dispatch of same to the LGA on our behalf, and not actually moving the response itself. So, somebody happy to move that way? Councillor Crew, speak to it.
Yes, I'm happy to move it. Yes, I'm happy to speak to it. But look, I think a lot's been said. Two very, very worthy issues that we spoke tonight. It's good to see lots of engagement on those topics as well. I look forward to seeing the response back from the CEO.
Thank you. And Councillor Barnett, happy to second.
Second.
Wish to speak to it?
No, I think some good points, and practical points have been raised by various members. I don't know.
Sam, you're going to speak. Process is saying I'm not going to speak.
I have raised my.
Yeah, I don't think the meeting procedures actually refer to raising anything. It's,
I'm seriously thinking about putting up some motion about changing our policy.
Oh, please. I'd be delighted.
I have to do that when we had that discussion before. Was it a couple of years ago?
I've always lost that debate, Councillor, but anyway, that's not relevant to this particular motion.
No.
Any further debate on this item? Okay, that concludes the debate. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Okay, that concludes the reports. We have the council diary, whole pile of stuff there. The Daffodil Day afternoon tea. I apologise, I can't get there at the library on Friday the 26th. The Rose Street Public Realm upgrades. Oh, sorry, what is that? Is that, look, we're actually out with picks and shovels upgrading Rose Street, or is that that's the public engagement meeting? Okay, terrific. 1502, Food and Art Trail launch. Everyone's invited to that, so please come along and celebrate our great local foodies and artists on the 14th of September. That's actually in the foyer here, in the Civic Centre here. Citizenship Day ceremony, always good. The Borderers performance, and the Wasted, Treasured, Forgotten.
A question of that. I've got a question of that.
You have a question about that? About which one?
Well, the 20.8. Normally we have it the first Sunday of the month. Is this something different or?
Yes, the Prospect Art Action Network have moved to not having 12 a year or 11 a year. They've moved to 80 a year, so the dates have changed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Tradition. They've decided that's out the window. Anyway, that's hopefully interesting exhibition. There'll be a great speech, allegedly, from somebody at the start of that.
Oh, got it
again.
Oh, he's hoping he gets pay due attention to that on the way in back from Peterborough. Now, general business, do we have any general business at all tonight? No? General business of an urgent nature? No? Confidential items is nil, meeting closed. Thank you. Please be joining for some refreshments after the meeting.